Hello, everyone, and welcome to Dynamics of a Podcast, the only podcast dedicated to me, Professor James Moriarty, Napoleon of crime, and arch nemesis of Sherlock Holmes.
All right. Thank you, Jeff. That was Professor Moriarty himself, Jeff Bender.
Hi.
I'm Madeline Quinones, and I am joined as always by my lovely co-host,
Dixie Parkinson.
And we are so excited today to have the cast of Ken Ludwig's Moriarty, a new Sherlock Holmes Adventure. So thrilled to have you guys all here.
Glad to be here.
So really quickly, some housekeeping. So as always, ways to get in touch with us. Our email is dynamicsofapodcast@gmail.com. Twitter is dynamicsofapod. Facebook is Dynamics of a Podcast. Our website is dynamicsofapodcast.com. And I'm still really excited about the domain. You can now listen to us on Apple Podcasts, we weren't on there before because I was missing some steps. Oops. But we're up there now, so that's very exciting. And all right, so lately we have been super blessed to have this amazing lineup of interviews, which is crazy. If anybody who's been following the show long enough knows that this just started out as Dixie and me talking to each other. And Dixie, who is our next interview guest?
So we are very excited to have Daniel Davis on our next podcast.
Now that couldn't possibly be the Daniel Davis who played Moriarty on Star Trek: The Next Generation.
Star Trek: The Next Generation.
They couldn't possibly be, yeah. Oh my gosh.
That's so exciting.
Yeah, it is. We are total. There is no way we are at all normal about this. No. It has been more of a dream than anything else for the longest time, and this is gonna finally happen in June. So anybody who wants to if anybody has any questions, things that they want us to ask him about, we just gave you a bunch of ways to reach out to us, so reach out to us and we will try to get your questions in. So, but yeah, we are so excited. But also, we are excited about all these wonderful people here today. So guys, please introduce yourselves so that people know who you are.
Actor number one.
Hi. I'm Christian Pedersen. I'm playing Sherlock Holmes.
Hi. I suppose I'm Nick Gaswirth, and I play Dr. Watson.
You suppose you're Nick Gaswirth?
I suppose. Sometimes I'm not sure.
All right, just clarifying that.
Thank you for that.
My name is Jeff Bender, and I play Moriarty et al. In the show.
Mm-hmm.
My name's Olivia Gilliatt. I play Irene Adler and Mrs. Hudson and Cartwright.
And I'm Talley Gale, and I play a handful of other characters, including Toby the dog.
Yeah.
We got an ovation, almost a standing ovation today.
Sometimes Toby gets exit applause a lot, and I know that it strokes my ego, but I know that it's really Toby. Because Toby's a
Half
cute
of
guy.
it is the breaking the fourth wall thing.
Hmm.
So
Yeah, but you need Toby to set it up. It's all good. I'm happy to be the conveyance.
Toby is such a beloved dog. So
Mhm.
it's a good
He's
character
a
to be
very good
involved
boy.
with. Yes.
Good boy.
The best boy. All right, so as we are recording, this is the second to last day of the production. You guys have 2 performances left. One is tonight, and then that's it. How are you all feeling?
Oof.
Tired?
Yeah,
Yeah.
it was hard.
Physically or emotionally?
Well, yeah.
I mean, either both.
It's bittersweet. It's
Yeah,
always
definitely bittersweet.
it's always an adventure to go out of town, which makes it fun to explore, and you get to form this like little troupe really fast. And I would say that the more physical the show is, and the more ensemble-y the show is, and this one is both of those things, the faster you bond under fire. So it's bittersweet because I have so loved working with this particular cohort, and I'm also really looking forward to not putting on a corset or 4-inch shield boots and sleeping in my own bed.
Totally understandable.
Hmm.
Yep.
I think there are times when you do shows that whether it's a big cast or a small cast, and sometimes it's not the best of times. It might be a good show, but you're not having as good of a time. You're by the end of the run, you're ready to be done with it. You're ready to go. And that wasn't necessarily, it wasn't the case for me, at least for this show. I've had a wonderful time doing this show. I mean, I can't wait to see my family. But like Olivia said, this is going to be bittersweet. I'll be sad to let this one go. Good people in this cast.
Yeah.
It's hard to believe it's been, yesterday or 2 days ago, it was 7 weeks that we started.
Yeah.
And
Oh, wow.
Yeah,
for me,
yesterday, right.
it's really gone by very quickly. I was expecting it to, I don't know, we have expectations, right? But I was expecting it to feel longer. And it's hard to believe that this time tomorrow it's over. You know?
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's,
Yep.
bummer. We really created something special here. You know, it's a world premiere, so we're the first ones to have ever done it, and we discovered the script as we rehearsed it, and of course, you know, Ken was present for a good deal of our rehearsal, and so the script was changing. It was a living, breathing organism, which is not usually the case when you're working on a play that's been done 10, 20, 1,000 times.
Right.
And you have an expert like Ashley there too. It just
Yes. Oh gosh, what a brilliant woman.
we were lucky, so lucky to have all that
Just an
information at our
encyclopedia.
fingertips.
And then some.
And then some, yeah.
An expert in so many ways too, because it wasn't just the like knowledge about the world of Sherlock Holmes. It was also this thing of writing as a duo, where Ken is the writer, he's the one generating, but Ashley is a phenomenal editor. And I would say not just in terms of word for word what ends up on the page, but in terms of even the impetus. There was a moment, a character who didn't make it into the final draft of the script, where a vicar played by Talley was walking through the train and doing a crossword puzzle. And the first cross they did was using a palindrome that was a 3-letter word for surprise, which was wow. And Ken's first impulse was, that joke has never played. So I want the line to read, a palindrome, which is a word spelled the same way, backwards and forwards, for surprise. And to which Ashley said, yeah, because explaining a joke always makes it. And
like
that
daily
like
rehearsal.
back and forth between the two of them was just most delightful thing to witness, like,
Yeah.
because it takes some chutzpah to put that forward, but it also takes some grace to like hear that and be like, oh yeah, you're right.
Well, can we also just say, and not to blow sunshine, up Ashley, but she's also a badass swordmaster. So,
Oh, that's right.
Yes, she is.
yeah.
Yeah.
I hope she's
But-
listening to this podcast.
I think that she might be. But
The Irene Adler bio that
Mhm.
Mycroft says is based on Ashley.
which I
Yeah.
feel so
All those-
stupid for missing in the first time, because I knew all those things about her and I didn't catch on until Ken was like, that's an Easter egg, right? And I'm like, oh, duh. So yeah, no, our last episode was with Ken and Ashley, and that was a lot of
Mhm.
fun. And yeah, they're awfully cute together.
Yeah.
They are. They really are.
It was a lot
We
of fun.
didn't want them to
talking with
leave.
them.
We really didn't. They were
No.
always so welcome in the rehearsal room and
Mhm.
were a joy.
Aw.
They had
So-
better things to go do, apparently. They had to-
Off to London.
yeah.
The West End.
Yeah. Whatever.
But it is
Be-
really bonkers. It's really bonkers to think about what you were just saying, Christian, of like, it's only been 7 weeks, because I think Ken and Mark Brokaw had been working on the script for a really, really, really long time.
Yeah.
Like it was slated to premiere before the pandemic.
Mhm.
And it's not unusual for a play in development to take a really, really long time on the page, but then there's so many moving parts that come together just at the end. When I think of the number of things that were changing for us set wise and costume wise, and just like all the tiny little pieces that had to come together in a really relatively short time, that's how my brain works with time anyways. Like the more filled the time is, the faster it goes.
Mhm.
On our day off, we went to Cedar Point.
That got our brains scrambled by giant roller coasters.
Right.
And our backs and spines.
Yeah, that was
All of
great. That was great.
That would almost be a perfect segue into something that I want to ask, but it's gonna come later. We're gonna have a spoilery section at the end, which Dixie, we should probably workshop a name for that. Since we
Yeah.
keep doing it, we gotta come up with a proper name for it. All right, so what drew you guys to this play in the first place? Like what did you want to get involved with it?
Oh. Well, what drew me to it was the chance to play Sherlock Holmes was pretty awesome. And work on a world premiere by Ken Ludwig was awesome. Work with Mark Brokaw was awesome. And so the big three there. And also I had done a play in Cleveland Playhouse a few years back, and I had a great time. And so there was that. Like I knew at least it was going to be fun to come back. And also being a working actor is awesome. So there was like a whole list of really great things. And we got the added bonus of getting to work with Michael Barakiva too. So it was like just a laundry list of things being checked off of awesomeness. Does that make any sense?
Yeah.
Yeah, from my perspective. And I'm pretty sure that everybody else kind of has a similar version of that.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
You listed the right ones.
There was I know a lot of people that auditioned for this play and really wanted to do it because and rightly so, we all kind of knew it was going to be a blast, and that's exactly what it's been. It's been a thrilling roller coaster of a play. It put Cedar Point to shame.
The audition room was fun. The audition room for this, I had a great time because Mark was in the room, and Ken and Ashley were in the room, and the Stephanie Clapper and others. And there was so many people. I think Mark Cuddy was in there too, from Cleveland Playhouse, and it was a fun room to be in for the audition. It was. I mean, I didn't even know that there was a new Ken Ludwig play until I got the audition notice. So I didn't know that I wanted to be drawn to it until I had the audition, and then I was really, drawn into it, and I really took to the sides I got, and I loved playing Lestrade. I had to do Lestrade, Moriarty, and
Mycroft.
Mycroft for the auditions, and it was so much fun. I had so much fun playing with them, just experimenting and playing around, and they let me do it. They let me play, and it was fun. It was great.
I think one of the things I discovered about this particular cast when I was going through doing like the pre-first rehearsal stalking is that everybody's a clown, and I actually mean that quite literally. I think everybody here has facility in the skill of clowning, and we all have done shows that require the same kind of rhythm and style and understanding. And it was neat to go like, okay, this is what we are, and this is what this ensemble is. And of course, that's not necessarily the play specifically, but for those, like if you're an actor, you are familiar with sort of the latest batch of Ken Ludwig plays, which do require people playing multiple roles, or this like heightened sense of funniness and farce, which kind of goes back all the way. And I was like, all right, here we go. This is there's going to be a bunch of juggling kooks. I was right.
That's our band name, the Juggling Coops.
Juggling Coop.
That's it. We've been searching for it for 7 weeks.
Yes.
Yeah, that's totally it. Madeline, I don't know how familiar we are with like auditioning in general, or what the process is for us actors, but when it's theater, it's an interesting question to ask, what drew you to the play? Because really the play draws us first.
Okay.
Because we're in auditions for a number of things, and it's working on all these different things. And I think it's really important to get on board with the material that you're working on. But then the play picks you. And I think something that was really exciting for me was in all the different things that I auditioned for, oftentimes I'm doing a sort of like mental gymnastics of like, I could do something interesting with that part. Like, that person's not me. None of these people are me. And that's the joy of it. But what am I interested in investigating with that? And the description of Irene Adler in this as like an American badass ahead of her time who challenges Sherlock and like is, part circus clown, part opera diva, part, saber-toothed tiger. I was like, oh, that's me. Yeah, that one I want to do. But it is funny. It's like sometimes, and it's been a really interesting thing. I want to comment on that as like a sort of side thing, because it was a conversation that Ken and I had on the first day of rehearsal, was that especially in these clowning plays, in these plays where people are playing multiple tracks, he said he's gotten really interested in centraling women's voices. So earlier this year, he rewrote a play of his that had gone to Broadway before called Lend Me a Tenor, which I believe Nick has done before, which is a hysterical farce, actually set at the Cleveland Opera. And he rewrote it so that instead of the mistaken identities happening between two tenors, it's now Lend Me a Soprano. And that's when I met Ken, was at callbacks for that show. And he had all these ideas about like how centering women in the story changed the story. And I think that there was actually something really fun to that about getting to add Hilda, who is, I would say, like a major villainess in this story. And
That's right.
And giving them some agency in a way that's very different from previous Sherlock plays.
Well, one thing I've thought about too is Mrs. Barabbas, who's shows up in the first act for a couple minutes, and she's sort of a bad guy for a minute. It could so easily be a man. And when this script is published, it will be written actors 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And originally it was actresses 1 and 2 were Olivia and me. And that has all been changed to be a little more neutral. However, it does indicate that he wrote that role to be a woman played by a woman, which could, so like the gender of Mrs. Barabbas could go either way and work great for this story. But I think that is an interesting thing to note, that was a very specific choice that he made for some reason, and I'm grateful for it.
Yeah. So have any of you done any Sherlock Holmes productions before, or been close to doing any Sherlock Holmes productions? Jeff?
I have, yeah, and I went to the University of Michigan, and we did a production of a Sherlock Holmes play. Honestly, I tried to look it up. I can't remember the title of it or the author of it, but I played Moriarty, and strangely enough,
Get out.
yeah,
Yeah.
I didn't tell you that. I didn't tell you that.
No.
Yeah. So my first entrance, it was in the big Power Center at the University of Michigan. It's the big theater there, and my entrance was my back to the audience, sitting in a chair, and it's a rolling platform that has a ginormous pipe organ that I come out on, and I turn around and I just glare at the audience. And the costume designer had me, all in black, and I had shaved a widow's peak into my head.
Oh my gosh.
I had long black hair down to here with eggplant highlights. I was fancy, and and that was what I played. I played Moriarty in that show, and I love playing villains because there's so much fun to just chew the scenery with. The problem was when my hair grew back, it just looked like antenna like that when it grew back. But it was a blast. I mean, the legend of Sherlock Holmes and Moriarty and the rivalry between them, it seems so timeless. I mean, I think everybody has heard of these characters, and it's so much fun to play. And it's been so long since I've got to play them.
Okay, now I gotta find out what this play is.
I want to say the author's name is Christopher, but I can't remember for sure. I'll look it up while you guys are talk amongst yourselves. I'll look it up.
I think Eggplant Highlights might also be a band name.
Oh yeah,
Yeah.
It's the first album.
There you go. So, I think if I'm understanding right, none of you are actually Sherlock Holmes fans, but is that something that you've enjoyed in the past, or maybe I'm misspeaking and maybe I've misunderstood?
I mean, I think there's.
Well, I'm a big fan. Go ahead, Nick.
Okay.
Oh no, I think none of us would describe ourselves as Sherlock Holmes experts or particularly well studied, especially before we got here and started kind of doing our own, at home study. But I think we all grew up with Sherlock Holmes.
Right.
We all know Sherlock Holmes as intimately as the kind of the populace does. Everyone knows characters and what they do and all the. I mean, Sherlock Holmes Jr. was a show when some of us were kids. There's what's the Great Mouse Detective?
Yeah.
There's so many different things that we've all the BBC show, obviously, the Robert Downey Jr. movies. We've all been
Wishbone.
By the legend of Sherlock Holmes and Watson and Moriarty and Irene. We all know these characters, but I don't think any of us really studied it until we got here or until we got this job.
I think to clarify, kind of what Olivia was saying earlier, we were all we did not ask to audition for the show. We were asked to audition for the show. And it is the way there's a whole talk about union rules, anybody who wanted to audition technically could have, but we were specifically sought out to audition for it. And I think for a lot of actors, part of the joy of that is that you have a reason to learn something new. Mm-hmm. And so even if we didn't start out as Sherlock enthusiasts, we got asked to audition for a play and we went, yeah, this looks awesome. And I want to know more about it. And I like this playwright. And since that time, I know we all have grown to have an appreciation for it, because how can you not when Ashley is in the room and Ken is in the room?
So true.
See, Ken didn't have anything to worry about listening to this episode. I need to tell him that.
Worry about? We all love him so much.
Oh,
he was afraid you were all going to trash him.
He's a sensitive soul.
Oh my God. Oh, Ken.
We love him so much.
You're listening. Don't be silly.
Oh, Ken is the best. Ken is amazing.
I really enjoyed that conversation. It was a lot of fun talking with him.
Yeah, we'll have to listen.
Yeah, definitely.
We got a lot of free time coming up, so
No one who needs 5 actors.
Yeah.
Oh, so actually something that Ken said about the set made me think about something that I hadn't before, which is that this play is actually like really fast paced. Is it faster paced than a lot of plays are? Because like the set doesn't need to change. There are pieces of furniture that move around, but you don't have like revolving things or anything. So that actually means that you can like walk out a door, walk in another, and that makes it faster, right?
Yeah.
Part of it, yeah, for sure. The way it was described to us all through rehearsal was the set comes to us. So the room, whatever room we're in, comes to us rather than having the feeling of we're traveling somewhere. Everything kind of swirls and revolves around the people on stage, which is a little I thought a very cool way to think about it. And that was certainly different for me, that kind of idea. But it definitely speeds things along, I think.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. In fact, John, our stage manager, told us we need to slow down a little bit because we're going so fast. Yeah. But yeah, it's a very fast-paced show. It's a fast show. I don't think there's any way around that. Because it just the action just keeps coming and coming.
Yeah. No, that's just really cool. I'm always interested in how pacing works, and especially for Sherlockian productions. I mean, some of my favorite Sherlock Holmes stuff is like pretty like slow, but it's always interesting when it picks up the pace, and yeah, that's just something that I hadn't thought of previously.
I think it is that I don't remember if it was Michael or Mark, which one of our directors pointed it out early on, but usually we associate Sherlock with mysteries. And the thing about this story is that it's not a mystery.
Right.
The mystery of who did what is established incredibly early on. And so then instead it's a caper, it's a chase. And yeah, it is really fast paced, but mostly because we're hitting so many locations. It's then we went there, and then we went there, and soon thereafter we went there. And, which is always like an interesting theatrical challenge, because I think it's quite often the case that we do that in an abstract way. You do it with a light shift or a sound cue, which I think is also part of that clown vocabulary of it's that like kids on a playground kind of thing of like, I am now on a boat. Okay, we're all on a boat, right? We declare it and that becomes the truth. And you have to kind of expect or like assume that the audience will just like go with you on that. But yeah, that it's what's been interesting, I think, about this particular production is that it's towing this line between that kind of like, now we're on a boat or now we're at a waterfall, let's say, with no, we want the audience to really feel that that's happening. So this play has the fastest costume changes I have ever seen. Because we're trying to actually go for this idea that like that we're separate people. It's not the same person showing up again and again and again. And so we have like SWAT teams backstage.
Like a pit crew
flying in with a wig. Yeah, like a pit crew.
Yeah.
But yeah, that makes it pretty hair raising back there.
Literally.
It's a comedy. So like add to that too, it's not, it's also funny. And anything that is supposed to be funny cannot by definition be overarchingly slow. And so because because the pace needs to be maintained in order for anything funny to land and to exist, that doesn't help all of those hairy moments backstage of, oh God, what's happening? Oh my God. And when you layer all of that together, you get a very compact, funny, fast-paced thing.
Yeah, if you go too slow, the audience catches up with you, and they're ahead of you.
Right.
Well, something I was wondering about. I mean, unfortunately, I didn't get the chance to actually see the play. I've only read the script. But like, what was it like to go through like about a dozen characters in 2 hours?
Mentally exhausting, physically exhausting. but this is what I do. This is kind of my bread and butter. I tend to do shows that I have multiple characters. I'm kind of used to it. It's just the actor in all of us. I think that that's what we're trained to do. And yes, this is a lot of characters to figure out, but it's rehearsal, repetition. You rehearse it in the rehearsal room and you figure it out. And then when you're on stage, it's all the work has been done in the rehearsal room. So when you're on stage, what you see on stage is all that work culminating to all these different characters. So it just becomes, well, this is what I am in the show. These are the characters I am in the show, and I don't really think about it as much anymore as I like when I got the role, when I got cast in the show. I thought, oh my God, what am I going to do? But you figure it out. You figure it out in rehearsal.
Although this was my backstage thought today for the first time in the 7 weeks that we've been here, was I was wondering, Jeff, the number of times where you are referencing you. So Otto comes in and talks about Alice being held by this guy named Moriarty. And that happens a number of times. And it made me wonder, in your mind's eye, are you imagining yourself in each of those other parts? Or or do you have a different mental image for Thomas Fitzwilliam Prescott?
You know what? I have not thought of it that way. I guess I just don't. I think of this nebulous character of Moriarty when I'm talking about him as another character. I don't think of him as me playing that character. I just think of it as another person. Yeah, that's interesting. I never thought about it that way. I like to compartmentalize my mind.
Yeah, probably you have to.
Yeah, or I'll go insane.
So, yeah, these characters have been played by thousands of actors, and something that I've been wondering is, like, are there any previous performances that have inspired your own, and what's it like to do your own takes on these characters?
Steal as much as you possibly can. Yeah, I talked to Ashley about my early on, and I said, Ashley, you know a lot about Sherlock Holmes, and I don't. And here I am about to bring him to life, and I want to avoid falling into any sort of trap of like the obvious choice of cliches of all the things that Sherlock Holmes does, and she said, you know what, Christian, I'm paraphrasing. She said, he's very elastic.
Mm-hmm.
I remember her saying that, and she's like, you can pull him in any direction you want, and don't worry about it. You're not going to break him. He can go a lot of different ways, and just do what feels right. And she really empowered me and encouraged me to really make it my own. And it, so thank you, Ashley. It really helped a lot. You know what I mean?
I think Stephen Fry played Mycroft in I think about him when I'm playing Mycroft. I love Stephen Fry. I think his Mycroft is just so even keeled throughout the whole thing, and I like him as Mycroft. So if anything, I think about him with any of my characters. Although I have thought about Daniel Davis, and I'm a huge Star Trek fan, so. I've watched those episodes millions of times. But I think Stephen Fry is the one that I kind of envision the most.
He was in the Downey movies, right? That was it.
Yeah,
right. He's great.
Yeah,
I think it has a lot to do with the script first. Like it has to do with we're already getting somebody else's interpretation of the Conan Doyle stories, right? We're not getting Conan Doyle. We're getting Conan Doyle interpreted by Ken Ludwig, which has a very particular flavor. And I think each time it gets sort of passed along, it gives us more leeway. More freedom. And then there's always the research that you can do and this kind of stuff that gets brought to a part that way. With this one, I asked our wonderful literary department what it meant to be an opera diva in the 1890s, right? Because that's not Renee Fleming. It's a different, like the context of like what media is available changes the story a lot. And they came back with like 3 pages for me that basically said opera divas were rock stars. And they would do one night only events. And I was like, okay, and this is not research based. This is just imaginatively based. I was like, all right, this is my chance to play Linda Ronstadt. So if I'm trying to channel anybody, it's Linda Ronstadt.
I see some Pat Benatar in there too.
There you go.
With your best shot.
Yeah.
I think there was a weird thing with Watson, because he narrates most of the play, that like for me, I always think of Watson as like kind of a stuffier character and a more kind of rigid and formulaic kind of guy. But because he does so much of the show that's just direct address, that doesn't really fit. Like, you have to be approachable to an audience and you have to kind of be their conduit. So I was excited because there was no room to be that cardboard cutout of what we think, or what I always thought of as Watson. So I enjoyed getting to have fun with that. And I feel like we all kind of had these like great doorways into humans that were funny humans and approachable humans and intelligent humans, without having to adhere to what we all think of as the cartoon versions of these people.
Do you have like a favorite line or exchange? I mean, either your own or someone else's?
Anything with Toby. Anything with Hilda.
Yes.
Yeah.
Olivia and I usually like to listen to Lestrade's like the coroner report, like he was killed with a knife, and we like to listen to that because we find it really funny, and we like listening to the audience reaction to that one.
Well, I was gonna say I loved my interaction, Lestrade's interaction with Hilda.
Oh yeah, me too.
At each other. Yeah. Yeah, that's it.
Yeah, that line,
That's a
Lestrade's
good
line of "it was very complex." He was, the man is dead. He was hit by a bullet. But what's hard is we're listening to that, and we're listening to the audience, and I have this compulsion where when I'm supposed to enter a scene mid-conversation, I'm pretty adamant about starting the conversation backstage, and so sometimes Talley and I can get a little bit distracted in our back and forths about who loved Otto von Ormstein more and the particular nature of that love, and how we're going to get the bastard who shot him.
Irene works really hard to be friends with Hilda, and like there's like a whole little sequel.
But today I touched her elbows.
Oh!
That was a no-no zone.
That's then Hilda's no-no zone.
And that's what brought us on stage.
That's amazing. All right. So, sorry, we kind of been jumping around the notes here. Oh, Christian. So the question is, do you have a favorite line or exchange of dialogue, your own or someone else's?
Off the top of my head, no, I don't think I do have a favorite. I think there's a lot of them that I really like. And also I kind of don't want to say, because we're still doing the show. So I will answer that question in 22 hours.
When we're not going to be recording. Great.
I know. Sorry to be mysterious, but yeah. There's a lot of awesome lines.
There really are.
Yeah.
Some of them that are so funny that, Ken is just like, here you go. And all you have to do is say it. You don't have to do anything. And it's just a lot of times, I really do love being in comedies. I think we all do. But, getting the audience to laugh is such a thrill. And one thing that I've noticed, this group of people, the 5 of us, we work so beautifully towards building towards, and then, you know, like two people will be doing all the work, and then another person will come in with one line, and then it just cracks the audience up. And I've got a few of those myself where everybody else is working their asses off, and then I just say blah blah, and then the audience goes crazy, and it's like I you know, don't take any credit for it. It just happened to be, you know, and it's just a beautiful ensemble work that happens there, and I see it every night, and I'm gonna really miss that. And I miss that the most, I think. Yeah.
Yeah.
Definitely one of my favorite lines is, "You're a very challenging person." It's just like, well, isn't that the pot calling the kettle black?
There is some humor in that, indeed. Yes. Yeah, I don't think Sherlock is challenged by too many people.
No.
But maybe Mycroft.
Right. Well,
Oh,
that's what
of
Ashley
course.
was saying, was that like, I'm being challenged by me, and I don't like it. And then I'm kind of used to Mycroft, who is also me, and then Moriarty is also. I need to stop being around people who are me.
Yeah.
So
I like Watson so much because they're so different, but they
right.
go so well, you know.
Watson does not do a lot of challenging.
No. No, but one of my favorite just like funny moments though is when Holmes and quote unquote Alice are acting acting badly because they're held at gunpoint by Mrs. Barabas, and that just kills me every time, because I really enjoy when Sherlock Holmes gets a chance to be funny, and when it's not done obnoxiously.
I try to tiptoe on the obnoxiousness, you know, just go as close as possible, but.
And Christian, you do this little hair flip thing that, I don't know, it just kills me.
He is dreamy. He is dreamy when he does that.
Yes.
True.
Yes.
People have crushes on him in the audience.
Mhm.
They do. Sometimes we find out about it.
Mhm.
There were these ladies beside Uma one time who were like talking about, Uma is Christian's wife, like talking about him. And then when they found out Uma was his wife, like clammed up, I think is the way I remember that story.
You're coming to see the show tomorrow, Madeline?
I am coming.
All right, I'll give you some extra hair flip tomorrow.
Oh,
I'll be obnoxious on the last show. Sorry, John. Careful what you ask for, you know.
Oh, no, it's really fun. It's really funny because Ken was like, Christian is almost too handsome, and that's an old-fashioned traditional thing, that because Doyle complained about the original main illustrator, Sidney Paget, drawing Holmes to be too handsome. He's like, Holmes shouldn't be that handsome. And so ever since there's sort of a traditional idea that that Sherlock Holmes shouldn't be too pretty. And I'm just like, you know what? Sherlock Holmes can be as pretty as he wants to be. It's fine.
And that's why we have Christian.
Yeah.
Exactly.
A hair actor. I mean, that's just what it is.
This is my favorite move. This is what you do.
Oh, yeah. Now that is out of necessity, I assure you.
I know it is. But it looks
my
so
hair is
sexy.
almost long enough to put in my mouth, and when it goes down, I have to. Yeah, that one was born out of necessity. That one.
I don't think we've seen many blonde Sherlocks before.
No.
And that was in the dramaturgy packet.
That's right.
Sherlock means blonde haired.
Uh-huh.
That's right.
Yeah.
I don't think it's the reason you got the part, Christian.
I mean, I'll take what I can get, you know.
No, he did this in the audition. They said, "You're hired."
Yeah.
Irresistible.
Yeah. Well, I think Ashley was a big champion. She told me, and you know, I think everyone had to agree on all of us. You know, it wasn't one voice over the other, but I think that the role of Sherlock, he's got to be serious, but he's also got to be kind of goofy and out there. And it was my second audition in person in 3.5 years.
Oh, wow.
And so I think I was kind of out of it and goofy and like, what's happening here? Okay, words, yes. And shaking hands with people and like meeting them. And I'll never forget, Mark and Ken kind of popping up from behind the table in the audition room and walking up to me and shaking my hand. And it's like, there's been a pandemic for the past 2 years. And here we were like being humans and shaking hands and being right up in front of each other and saying hi, like the old days. And it was wonderfully shocking. And I'll always remember it like, God, they're so friendly. And it encouraged me to do well in the room. And I'm sure you guys had similar experiences. Like,
absolutely.
Yeah, it was a really great audition. And I'm not just saying that because I got the part, but like I felt very comfortable in the room. I don't know.
Audition rooms can be
that
cold.
Story kind of went away from the question there, but that's
okay.
You don't always get a warm audition room, especially after this much time. The world has changed. Our world has changed. The industry has changed. Audition rooms can be like, a microscope. You're sitting there going, well, hopefully I've made the right collection of choices that they'll see me again to know that I can make other choices if they want.
Yeah.
But you never get people hopping up, shaking your hand, giving you hugs, giving you pats on the shoulder, what they want to see before you even start. I mean, it was like, here, we would like you to get the job. Why don't you try to do that?
Yeah.
It's an incredibly lovely feeling. It's not how it usually goes.
Ken and Ashley said that that you guys, Christian, Nick, and Jeff, were like, they knew right away. Is what they said, that you guys are their first choices. They said that casting, of course, Olivia's gone dark now. Casting for Irene was incredibly hard because they needed somebody who could both be a leading lady and also be a character actress. And I was like, oh, I hadn't thought about that before, but that makes a lot of sense. And then also that casting for actor 5 was also very difficult. And that apparently this was like the first time that Ken had cast 2 people who weren't in the room with him before. So
I didn't know that.
Yeah.
I didn't do that either.
I auditioned much later. When we were chatting about this before, I auditioned much later than the rest of the gentlemen, and I think Talley did too.
Yeah.
But it was from a tape first. My first round was a tape before it was, in person, and Ken wasn't in the room, but I had met him at a callback for a different play of his. So no, it was just Mark Brokaw in the room. And when a director wants to see you do something different, we call that an adjustment. And Mark got up and very politely, in his very Midwestern way, said, "I'm so sorry to interrupt." And he did that 8 times for one scene. But I was like, well, I want what you want here, buddy. So, because it's always a collaboration, but it was still really great vibes. And yeah, Mrs. Hudson's the most fun to play.
Oh, I bet.
Mrs. Hudson is a lot of fun to watch.
I actually emailed in advance of the audition because in my research on Sherlock, which is admittedly not as extensive as, like, say, Ashley's or Ken's, I just really wanted to play a lady with a Scottish accent. And so I read A Scandal in Bohemia, and I read the script, and I sent a note to casting asking, I can't find a good research reason why Mrs. Hudson couldn't be Scottish as a citizen of the British Isles. And they said, well, we haven't seen one we like yet, so do whatever you want. And then she thanked me because apparently she is Scottish.
Well, she's often portrayed that way. There's a long-standing like fan theory that she is based on the stories. Yeah. So okay, this is for Talley, actually. You get to play two two characters who are pretty unhinged. So is that a lot of fun, or is that
Yes.
just exhausting by now? Or is it both?
Yes.
Yes to
All of
all.
the above.
All the above.
Yeah. No, I feel like I yell a lot in this play because I yell a lot in the play. Because obviously yelling is the only way to play unhinged. That's not true. Yeah, no, it's great fun.
I know that it's not in the script like this, but I swear that Hilda is just talking in all caps.
Yeah,
All the time.
she kind of is. And the character description is that she eats barbed wire for breakfast.
But has sensible meals for lunch and dinner.
Oh, yes.
Yes.
Yeah.
Breakfast.
Yes. Balances it out. Yeah,
Yeah.
no, it's they're fun. And like they also, but like, you know, as much as I just want to play crazy, there's also Hilda's just very in love and frustrated. And
Mm-hmm.
Mrs. Barabbas, who is the other one I guess you're talking about, is like really wants to prove herself and is scared that she'll fail. And so that has to that like helps inform like the style of Unhinged, I guess, a little bit.
No, that makes sense.
Yeah. And those interestingly you brought this up, Madeline, those were the two that I had to audition with, which are two types of characters I don't normally play, because they're like a little older and harder and edgier than stuff I get brought in for. And it was neat to be like, oh, okay, well, I have to play two of these characters that I don't feel like are totally in my wheelhouse. And I think because of that, I worked harder on that audition.
You totally
Well, they're
pull
in
it
your wheelhouse
off.
now.
Yeah, absolutely.
That's right. Well, thanks, Jeff. I think here's how I think I got this part. I will tell you. I was a tape and I think the last person cast in the show, and had to do a tape, and I was like, I don't know what to do. And because I think I didn't know what to do with these characters, Hilda had a unibrow. And the safe that Mrs. Barabbas used was a Heineken box because that was all I had available. And when I walked into the room, the first day, like talking to Ken, he was like, I loved the Heineken box, but the unibrow is what did it for me. And so I don't even know if he liked the acting, but I think he liked Ken himself will say there's like no depth to which he will stoop for a laugh. I was like, yeah, same. So
Yeah.
Oh, that's great. All right. The Irregulars, were those fun to play? Because I really enjoyed watching you two do them.
yes, they were a big blast. That's Cartwright and Milker. Yeah.
I didn't even know that's what they were known as. I didn't know they were the Irregulars.
Yeah.
Oh, it's super fun.
Yeah.
Yeah. And we mess with each other on stage too, which is great.
Mm-hmm.
Cartwright has a whole Olivia's Cartwright has a whole side story going on too.
Yeah, that's what we heard about a little bit.
It's a big day. The day that we meet Cartwright in this play is a really seminal day for Cartwright, because first they go to Mrs. Gasner's shop to get some supplies, and Mrs. Gasner is played by Jeff with the most fulsome bust I have ever seen, and because of the height difference between Jeff and me, it is right at eye level. And so
you're staring at it the entire scene. You're staring
Cartwright
at him.
is doing his best to be a gentleman, but cannot take his eyes away from that very compelling bust. And then I get to save Sherlock and Watson's lives by throwing a porter who's actually an assassin off of a train. So it is both the day where Cartwright gets a pattern for the kind of women he's attracted to, and also the day that he decides to become an MMA fighter. But I spend all of the time before we enter talking to an imaginary Milker, because Milker's on the other side of the stage, but I'm spying on Sherlock and the goings on at Baker Street and the hat and the guy in the fancy jacket with the fancy horses, and hoping that we can make a really strong impression and get full-time employment with the Baker Street crowd. That's Cartwright's motivation.
And Milker just like is like 8 months behind in puberty and like voice cracking stages, and just kind of wants to be like Cartwright, but like doesn't want Cartwright to know that Milker wants to be like Cartwright, but also like doesn't understand why Cartwright has changed after the Mrs. Gasner moment. Milker's just like, what?
Mrs. Gasner is a very impressive woman.
Oh yeah, Ken said that he's during one rehearsal he started writing a play about Cartwright and Milker, and I was like, yes, give it to us, I want it.
Actually, I'm thinking that he also wants to write a play about Irene and Hilda, but even if Ken doesn't, we already have a series in mind, because Irene and Hilda share the characteristic of not being comfortable in their emotions and not liking other people to see their emotions. So the show that we've come up with is that Hilda and Irene watch Hallmark movies together, and like hate watch them.
We hate it.
But all of the commercial breaks in between star Cartwright and Milker.
Oh my gosh, I still want to see that. Just do like a little YouTube series, please.
And with the plug for Mrs. Gasner's fine shop. Right?
Yes. Oh my God.
Yes, you
Mrs.
will come to Miss Gasner's.
Can Miss Gasner do like a Vanna White in her mop cap and her apron? Oh, that'd be so good.
Oh, all right. I really enjoyed Mycroft. Sorry, Jeff. I know you're eating.
I'm here.
But I love Mycroft as the original character, and I love seeing how he's done, and he gets done differently because there's not a whole lot to him in the canon. But he was just so delightful, and I that just made me really happy.
Well, it's fun because the idea of sibling rivalry between Sherlock and Mycroft is a lot of fun to play on stage and have that little dynamic that just, it's not a big portion of the scene, it's a very important part of the show, but it's a relatively short scene. But you get to see that side of Sherlock that you don't normally get to see. He's equal to him in his mental capacities, and he's just as smart. He's maybe a little more outgoing, a little more. He's better with the ladies, a little more suave. And although his hairstyle, I don't know.
Love that wig. I think that is an homage to young Sherlock.
Yeah, I do too.
Which
I love that movie, Young Sherlock Holmes. Oh, that was the best movie. And it very much looks like him. I agree. But I enjoy playing with it. I enjoy having that moment because a lot of the characters I play, except for Moriarty, of course, aren't the smartest characters, that I play. But it's fun to match wits with my brother.
Right.
Brother mine.
Jeff has this fabulous costume for that part where he's wearing, like, this is such a thing of the past. I don't think they make these anymore, but like he's wearing the blazer of his club, the Diogenes Club blazer, which is purple. So it feels like Hugh Hefner. And then it has this beaded insignia on it that I swear to you up close is a Buick logo. And with that wavy hairdo, it's just a whole lot.
It's a lot to take in.
And then you get the interaction between Mycroft and Irene, and I told Ken, I was like, I didn't know that I needed it, but I was so happy I got it.
Oh yeah, well, it also shows you get to see Sherlock jealous,
Right.
for a change, you know, and that's you get to see you get to see these snippets of his life through other character interactions, and I love that about the show, because you see so many different sides of Sherlock, and that's one of them. I loved making him jealous in that moment.
Yeah. Well, Ken was like taking these three characters, Irene, Mycroft, and Moriarty, who all do who invoke different emotional reactions in Sherlock, and that's really fun to watch him get pushed and pulled in all these different directions. And then I think that makes it that much more satisfying later on when Sherlock when things happen to Mrs. Hudson, and Sherlock has to figure out how to go after the bad guys and he talks with Daisy and stuff. And so like after watching Sherlock getting batted around like this, basically emotionally, it's really satisfying to see him like kind of come back into his element. So that was a lot of fun. So let's just get into the spoiler section. So if anybody listening doesn't want to be spoiled, we'll have the timestamp in the show notes, and you can skip ahead. And literally, I am going to ask some questions about the very end. So if you do not want that spoiled, do not listen. I don't know if anybody listens to that or not, but it's on them at this point. So.
Well, the show's closing tomorrow, so by the time anybody listens to this, I think
I know, but they'll get to
production.
see. Baskerville is being produced all the freaking time, everywhere. Yeah. So I expect that Moriarty, it's not going to take that long for Moriarty to be everywhere.
Right on.
You said you wanted to ask a question about the end of the play.
I do have okay. So I've got to explain first the emotional progression here, because first I'm like, just Reichenbach. Reichenbach happens, and I'm just like shock, and then Sherlock starts talking again, and it's life is infinitely stranger than anything which the mind of man could invent. That's when I started crying. And it's like, there's this tiny part of my brain that's going, I'm wearing so much makeup right now. This is such a bad idea. Stop crying. But then, and then at one of my, so something that I meant to ask Ken and missed asking him about was the thing with the boots at the end, because that is not in the version of the script that Dixie and I got from Ashley.
Yeah, that was not Ken. That was discovered in the rehearsal room. I'm going to give Michael the credit, and I think when I did that last time, he kind of threw the credit back to me, but it was his idea, his genesis of the boots, mostly because it's like, well, you can't just leave them on stage. We gotta do something with the boots, and it evolved from there. But yeah, the first few times I did it in rehearsal, I was sobbing, and I did not plan to do that. I was like, and then eventually it got to the point where it was like, Christian, you got to stop crying, because the audience we have the audience feel it, and you're feeling it. I was like, I can't help it, man. It's like
it destroyed me. Like, I was already crying, and that just gutted me.
Yeah, it's a really beautiful moment, and you can't plan for that kind of stuff. It really, not to use an overused word, but it's an organic thing that happens. And Michael was and I, Mark was being there. He was there too, and it was like just letting that happen and getting out of the way of it was one of the highlights of my rehearsal process for that, the boots moment.
I remember also when we had our first Sure. I think when it was opening night, Michael Barakiva had us do this little closeout ritual where we all like got together in a circle, everybody who had been in rehearsal, and got to share favorite moments of rehearsal. And somebody mentioned the boots, and I had completely forgotten that moment originated on our very first day of rehearsal, where we got to do this bonkers thing that is very rare, but any directors who are listening, please do this with your casts. After we had finished table work, where we discussed like the meaning behind the lines and the context, et cetera, when we got up on our feet, we got to do this crazy exercise where, with script in hands, we just did the whole play. Like there was it was a rehearsal in that it was like, here's where I think I want to go. But basically it was just a chance to make all these proposals of like, this is how I think this goes. And this is how I think this goes. And everybody else just responds in the moment, which is what you want to happen in any kind of rehearsal. But it had this beautiful way of like letting us all really play with each other without any notion of like what might be right. It was just playing in that playground sense of like, what's going to serve the story. And Michael reminded us that the boots came from that very first day. So that was something that somehow, landed in the story.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. That just hurts so bad. Yeah. And then, gosh, those last few seconds, Ken told us that, and it was in the script that we got that originally there's one last line, and he's like, and people kept telling me to cut it out, and so eventually I cut it out, and then I tried to write another line and I couldn't, and I'm like, yeah, and it works. It's so effective, just like dead silence, and it's just the two of you, and just.
But I warned these guys that at one point I'm going to come back stumbling in, just like Irene does as Moriarty, and finally, and I'll attack them.
One eye hanging out.
I will win, and I will win finally.
2 more chances.
I got 2 more chances.
Get your ass kicked one more time, then, won't you?
Yeah.
Moriarty deserves a break, poor guy.
Right? Thank you, Talley.
You're
Thank
welcome.
you.
I got you.
I so appreciate you guys taking the time to do this with us.
Oh yeah,
It's great.
Yeah.
So
No, it's been great fun.
Oh, thank you all for having us on the
yeah.
show.
Thanks for inviting us.
And Matt, we'll see
especially
you tomorrow.
Yeah, we'll see you tomorrow.
Yeah.
We'll see you-
Yeah.
Good deal.
There has. I need to make sure that there is at least one person to laugh at the Peter Blau joke.
That's
There should
right.
be one on the last performance. There should be somebody there to and I will
Wonderful.
do my duty.
Yep.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Well done.
Thanks to all.
All right. Well, thank you so much, guys.
Yeah,
This
thank
was
you.
amazing.
Nice to meet you, Dixie.
Yeah, nice to meet you.
Yeah.
Great meeting all of you.
Dynamics of a Podcast was created by Madeline Quinones, with sound design and editing by Dixie Parkinson, and music by Joshua Harvey. We do this podcast purely for the fun of the thing. Thank you for listening, and please join us next time.